Hello, this is DK Mishra. I'm going to discuss about the human rights. So once we try to understand about the notion of the human rights, what is human rights? In nutshell, we can understand the human rights is nothing, whatever the rights which is available to us, it is the human rights. So there are plethora of rights, human rights, natural rights, fundamental rights, legal rights, constitutional rights. There are so many rights available to in the field of rights. So therefore, behind the human rights, what is definition of rights? We can discuss later on in detail. Coming to the second aspect, which we discuss further about the idea of human rights. Entire idea can categorize into three parts: conceptualization of human rights, positivization of human rights, and realization of human rights. Conceptualization of human rights cover the concept which is not been codified yet. That is comes under the conceptualization of human rights. Under the conceptualization part, we discuss the historical development of the human rights and how the human rights came into picture, and it has not positivized. So before the enactment of the human rights, whatever the human rights available into the concept version or concept of the several jurists, we discuss under the heading of the conceptualization of the human rights. After that, we will discuss that positivization of the human rights. The positivization of the human rights is nothing, it is the codification of the human rights. The whatever the rights which is available in the black letter format or written format, we will discuss that positivization of human rights in the form of the convention, or how the history of the human rights, codification of the human rights came into picture, and what was the first document, how the positivization of human rights systematically developed according to time and circumstances. And after that, the third thing is that realization of the human rights. Under the realization process, we can understand whether we realize the human rights or not. So whatever the rights which is available to us in the form of de jure, whether it is recognized as a de facto or not. There are plethora of the human rights, but till the date, how many person can realize the human rights? Yes, I have the human rights. We will discuss the political debate on the realization of the human rights. What are the international politics behind the realization of the human rights? Whether the human rights is realized by the person or not, we will discuss further. After that, under the conceptualization part, as I told you that it covered the history of the human rights, and history further covered the ancient history, medieval history, dark age, period of Renaissance and Reformation. Under the ancient history, we will discuss the Greek contribution of the Greek, Roman contribution with regard to the human rights, and thereafter we will discuss that what are the positivization of the human rights, history of the codification of the human rights. As I told that Magna Carta is the first document that is available under 12 on 1215. That was the first document. Credit goes to Magna Carta for the codification of the human rights, and thereafter the French Declaration of Rights of Man and the Citizen 1789, United States Bills of the Human Rights 1791. Everything I will discuss in detail in the next part. After that, we will discuss what are the generation of the human rights. In the first generation, what are the human rights? After that, in the second generation, the nature, scope and definition of the human rights available under the second generation, and what are the difference between first and second generation, why it is called positive rights and why the second generation is called negative rights, and the third generation, what are the contribution of the third generation towards the human rights. We will discuss everything in detail, and after that we will discuss that generation after the generation of the human rights. We will discuss that what is the realization of the human rights, how human rights has been implemented, what are the provisions of the human rights which is talking about the implementational part of the human rights. So provisions of the United Nations Charter we will discuss, provisions of the international bills of the human rights we will discuss. Apart from the provisions, we will discuss the regional as well as international and universal implementation of the human rights. Everything will be covered under this chapter, and in this framework everything will be covered. Thank you for watching me. I hope you will enjoy my lecture later on.